In this video, we're going to take a look at the DSUM function. D stands for database. We don't have any data here, so we're going to go get some. And there's some out here in the help feature. So let's go to our little light bulb here and type in DSUM. And let's go to get help on DSUM. And let's look at the DSUM function here. And they should have some data here for us. And here we go. Let's scroll down a little bit. And here is, I'm going to widen this a little bit so I can see just a little bit more. And okay, so I want from here, we can actually copy and paste this data. It's not very much. We're not going to copy this stuff down here. Those are some examples, but we're going to do our own example. So let's do a Control C here. And let's go over here and do a Control V. And paste them in, and we don't need the help anymore because we've got our data now. And this one here, let's fix this up a little bit and just put the word apple there and just the word pear down here. Okay. And I'm going to insert just a little bit of space in here. Let's do a few rows. Just right click and choose insert. Okay. And I'm also going to make this look a little more like a table by going here and making the headings look like headings. I'm going to do the same thing up here. And okay, so now the headings look a little different, which makes it a little bit easier to read, I think. And this is my database down here. This is the D functions. The D stands for database. And so we need a table with rows and columns, and that's our database table. And then we also need a range up here where we put the criteria for selecting rows from the database. And the stuff up here is all basically the same as doing advanced filtering in Excel. So if you're not familiar with this, check out the video on advanced filtering. Okay, so here's our data, and let's take a look. We're going to be looking at the profit column here. And let's say that I want to find out what the total profit was for all of my trees. Well, I would just go down here and let's do this the fast way. Let's click on Auto Sum up here. And it looks for the closest numbers, and these are the closest numbers, so it tries to add them up. I don't really want those two blank cells down there, so I'm going to select just the cells that have the data, E8 to E13 in this case, and then hit enter. And it adds up all the numbers for me. And just to verify, if I drag the mouse over these 6 numbers here and look down here, anytime you drag the mouse over any numbers in Excel, it'll automatically give you 3 numbers down here. It'll give you the average, the count, and the sum. And the sum is 503. There's 6 numbers, and if you take this and divide it by 6, you're going to get $84. Okay, approximately $84. So that gives me the sum of any column or any row of numbers or any range of numbers. And but in this case, I don't want the sum of all of my trees. I just want the sum of the apple trees. Okay, so I want to tell it to look at this row and this row and this row, these 3 rows right here. And 105 and 75 is 180, and 45 is 225. So I want to get the number 225. Okay. Now, in order for that to happen, I have to tell it several things. I have to tell it, first of all, where my data range is. So here's my data range, my database. I have to tell it what the rule is. And here's my rule. I'm going to disregard this other stuff for a few minutes here. So it's about as simple a rule as you can get. In the tree column, I'm looking for the word apple. So I'm saying this row and this row and this row are the ones that I want it to look at. And then I've got to tell it which numbers to sum once it finds these rows down here. And I want it to sum the profit column over here, which is the 5th column in the table. Column 1, column 2, column 3, column 4, column 5. And we don't go by the column in the spreadsheet, we go by the column in the table. So even if this were over here, for example, it's still, notice how it adjusted my formula here, that's kind of nice. It's still column 5 in the table. Okay, so we'll just leave it here. So let's go down here, and we're going to call this total profit. And we're going to right align that so you can read it all. And down here we're going to put total profit for apple trees. Okay, and we're going to right align that. Okay, so now I need to put a formula down here that will add up the profit for just this row and this row and this row, and the number I hope I end up with is $225. So this is the DSUM function because we're applying some database rule before we do the summing. And as usual, we go to our formulas tab up here, and there should be, I'm not sure why Microsoft didn't do this, but they left out the database function. There's no book here labeled database functions. And even if you click on these, there's still no book called database functions. But if you go over here to the insert function and go to your categories here and click on the down arrow, what you'll see are basically the same things that you see up here, except there's a group called database as well. So click on that. And you see they all start with the letter D, and they're followed by the name of some function. Every single one of these has another version of the function without the letter D on the front. So there's an average, an account A, and so on. And the one I want, though, is DSUM. So let's click on DSUM and click on OK, and we get our function arguments dialog box. Okay, I got to tell it where the database is. So here's my database, the rows and the columns of the data. The field can be either the number, column number, which in this case is 5, or it can be the name of the column. We'll do the number 5 this time. And then it wants to know where the criteria is. We're just going to use this part of the criteria range. We could use, all the way over to column F, all the way down to row 3. But all we're saying is we want the tree value to be apple, and that's all we care about. Okay? Oh, and look at that. It's going to be the right answer. Let's click on OK. And we get 225. So it is adding up this number for apple, and this number for apple, and this number for apple. And if you look down here, I get 225 down there as well. So total profit for my apple trees is $225. I'm going to go up here. Actually, let's double click here. And instead of the number 5 there, I'm going to put the word profit. Whoops, got to spell it right. With quotation marks around it. It doesn't have to be a capital P like it is up here in G7. Excel doesn't really care about the case of the letters when you're doing column headings. So this should give me the exact same value. It should give me 225. So you can either do it, let's go click on this. You can either do it with a number for the column, or you can do it with quotation marks around the column name. Usually I think it's easier to do the column number. But if you got a lot of columns in the table, you might not want to count them, and it might be easier just type in the name. Let me show you one other thing about this too. I'm going to delete the word profit here now. I'm going to type it in again. And there's no quotation marks around it, but if I hit the tab key, Excel is nice enough to put the quotation marks around it for me. And I'll click on OK, and I get 225. And I want to show you what happens if the quotation marks are not there. Now, if you type this in yourself, you have to remember to put the quotation marks. If you use the dialog box, it'll put them in for you. Okay, so I'm leaving the quotation marks out, and I hit enter, and I get this error message, # name ? And you'll always see this error message. Usually it means that you did one of two things. You either misspelled the name of a function, or you forgot to put quotation marks around something. So it doesn't really know what you're talking about here if you don't put the quotation marks in. The syntax rules are, if there are no quotation marks, then what it is supposed to represent is either the name of a function or possibly a range of cells, that in this case would probably start with the letter P. And it can't find any range of cells called profit, and it can't find a function named profit, and so it says, I don't know what this is. I can't find the name of this any place in my list of functions. And so you get that error message. I'm going to do a Control Z here. I guess I have to do that twice to get the quotation marks put back in. Okay. Let me show you another way to do this as well. I'm going to delete this. Just hit the delete key. And we're going to try it again. So let's go to our insert function. It should still be on the same category. I just need to scroll down and pick DSUM. And actually, I need to, before I do that, I've got to do something else. I want to show you another way to kind of make this a little bit easier. If we've got just 5 columns here and 6 rows of data, it's not a big deal. when it's time to select the range, it's real easy to do. But for this DSUM function to be really useful, it's nice if it works on lots and lots of rows of data. So you may be using this for lots and lots of rows of data, and you don't want to have to scroll over thousands of rows of data every time you want to select the range. So what we're going to do is we're going to select the range here, and this little box up here is called the name box, and if you pause the mouse, that should show up. And you can give any range on your spreadsheet a name. I'm going to call this tree table. Now notice that I did not put a space between tree and table. One of the syntax rules for naming things is that they have to be one continuous sequence of letters. So if I put a space in there, it would not like that. But just go ahead and hit the enter key. And now anytime I type tree table, or anytime I go highlight this stuff, watch what happens when I highlight it again, tree table appears up here. So I can refer to that instead of the range C7 to G13. So now let's go down here, and let's go to our insert function, and let's go down to DSUM and click on OK. And my database is tree table. And watch what happens as soon as I type in table. By the way, the case doesn't matter, but it's a little bit easier to read if you capitalize each new word. And there it is. It's finding that data for me. And the field is 5, and the criteria is this stuff up here. By the way, you can also name the criteria range too. And I get the same number here, but I was able to type in the name. This is an absolute cell reference, by the way. So instead of doing $, what is this, $C, $7, and $G, $13, I can just type in tree table. So if sometimes you forget the $signs, putting in a named range like this may be a little bit easier for you. Okay, so if you're going to copy a formula down the page, if you give it a name like that, it will be an absolute cell reference. Okay, now let's try another example here. Let's double click on this, and actually let's not double click, let's go up here and click on so we get the dialog box. And for criteria now, I'm going to change the criteria. So I'm going to delete that, and this time I'm going to choose everything in all the way over to column F here in the first 2 rows. So rules that are on the same row, notice I've duplicated the height column here because I want 2 rules for the height. I want height between 10 and 6 and 16, not including either the 10 or the 16, and it has to be an apple tree. So when they're all in the same row, they all must be true. So I'm looking for an apple tree between 10 and 16. That's not going to work because it's too high. This one will work. That one's not going to work because it's too low. So really I'm just picking out this one row here, and I should get 75 when I do this. And actually down there it shows you the formula result, and the formula result is 75. So let's click on OK here. And so I'm just using more cells for my criteria range. And the last thing I'm going to do here is I'm going to go in here and I'm going to do the FX, and I'm going to change my criteria range again. Just drag your mouse over that and hit delete, and this time I'm going to include row 3. So if you have criteria on separate rows, it's as if each row was connected by the word or. Things on the same row are connected by the word and. So this row means apple trees and height greater than 10 and height greater than 16, which is just this one row right here. On this, and then there's the word or connecting row 2 with row 3. So I want apple trees in this height range, or I want pear trees. Okay, so I don't have any other criteria on pear trees, so it's just going to give me all of my pear trees. And so I'm going to get a 96 for this one. I'm going to get a 75 for the apple tree here. That's going to give me 171. And I'm going to get this pear tree down here, which is 77. And if I add that up, I'm going to get 248. And there's my answer right there. Click on OK, and I get 248. So that's the DSUM function. Use the DSUM function whenever you have a table of data here and you don't want to sum everything. You just want to sum some of it, and you know what the rules are for determining the rows that you want to sum.